Hello and welcome to another episode of Mr. Mayo's Poetry Unit. So tonight, what we're going to do in this particular episode is analyze personification. Personification is this poetic device of using somewhat, human characteristics or making things seem more human-esque, like they have agency, like they can make their own decisions. So what we're going to look at here today is a poem called Wind. And we're going to see how the poem is personifying, in particular, how it is personifying wind. So let's take a look at the poem, read it over real quick, and see what particular words jump out at us as personification. All right, here we begin. The wind it soars above the clouds on silver wings, wistfully it whispers and glides alongside freedom. Stretching its wings, it glides and soars and dives and charges deep in the sky's ocean, and eventually it carries on past the horizon. So if we take a real quick overview, if you haven't taken a look at some of the other videos in this poetry unit on YouTube, or you haven't been paying much attention to class, or you haven't actually gotten to reading through your poetic devices handout, let's take a look at a couple of things. Is there any sort of meter? The wind, it soars above, that's 5. The clouds on silver wings, that's 6. Wistfully it whispers, well, that's 6 again. And glides alongside freedom, well, that's 7. Now, I'm not seeing any sort of fixed meter here. I do see a example of alliteration, right? Wistfully whispers. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words. It's used quite often in poetry. And notice that wistfully whispers is also very close with the title of the poem, Wind. So there's a little bit of alliteration going on here, maybe with wings as well. I see a bunch of couplets. It doesn't look like it has any sort of rhyming pattern. Above, wings, whispers, freedom, wings, soars, ocean, on, horizon. Ooh, well, maybe half rhyme here if you say it correct. If you say it just the right way, past the horizon. But there doesn't really seem to be any sort of rhyming pattern. No, you know what? So let's dive right into the personification. So, the wind it soars above, the clouds on silver wings. Wow, that's got metaphor written all over it, which is another poetic device that we'll be taking a look at with another poem that you can find somewhere in this poetry playlist. Again, poetry playlist, another example of alliteration. Just trying to re-emphasize that because a lot of people seem to struggle with understanding what alliteration is versus consonants versus assonance and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at this. The wind it soars above the clouds on silver wings. Wow, metaphor written all over it. Wistfully it whispers and glides alongside freedom. All of a sudden, I have all of these verbs. The wind, it soars, it whispers, it glides, and it has emotion wistfully. That is an example of personification. If nothing else in this poem would be an example of personification, that wistfully. As if the wind itself could feel wistful of something. And if you don't know what wistful means, wistful is sort of this desire, this almost sad desire of something. You're wistful when when it's raining for it to become sunny so you can go outside and play. You're wistful that your friends are in detention so you can't play with them. You're wistful as this almost sad desiring of things. It's very passive feeling. Wistful is not, man, I'm so wistful about this. No, you wouldn't say that. Wistful almost has this passive connotation to it. And that the wind can be wistful, that is an example of personification. That the wind itself is wistful as it whispers. Again, what I just said, that line is an example of alliteration. But the wistful itself is an example of personification. And it is also telling that the wind, it soars, right? It soars, it whispers, it glides, it stretches, it glides, it soars, it dives, it charges, it carries. That's personification, that the wind can do these things. It does this. It does this. The wind itself is doing these things. Wistfully, wow, that is a powerful moment. That is a bright, shining moment, like the red bulb on a particular reindeer's nose, right? It stands out just like Rudolph's red nose in his family. Okay? Wistfully stands out like that nose in comparison to all the other words in when I'm looking for personification in this poem. But the fact that wind can soar, can whisper, can glide, can stretch. Oh my goodness, that it can stretch, and it can glide, and it can soar again, and dive, and charge. That it can do all of these verbs, that these verbs are in the active, I'm forgetting basic English here, but basically the active tense, that it's doing the actions itself and not being passive and having the actions done upon it, right? The wind became something because, I don't know, we need our weatherman to explain for me a little in much greater depth why the wind acts as it does. High, low front, warm, cold weather, something science-y. Notice that the most magical moment in Mr. Mayo's classroom is that when we have to talk about science. That's kind of telling too. Yes, you may take a moment to laugh at your English teacher. So, alright, so wistfully, great moment of personification, but that the wind itself can also do all of those verbs. Wow, that is also an amazing example of personification, personifying. And just take the very root word of that to understand personification, to make it like a person. As if it could do all the things a person can. That is personification. So, this has been Mr. Mayo explaining to you the poem Wind, and in specific, the poetic device known as personification, along with a little bit of review about other things, especially that alliteration, the wind, the wistfully, the whispers, and a little bit about form. I don't think we did anything about form. We did talk about meter, we did talk about rhyme, we did talk about metaphor. Wow! Right up here, the wind, it soars above the clouds on silver wings. Great example of metaphor. I have no idea what that means. So in the comments below, I would absolutely love to see and read what you think that this metaphor in this very first stanza, what are those silver wings? The wind, it soars above the clouds on silver wings. What are those silver wings? In the comments below, I would be more than happy to read what you think those silver wings are and what this metaphor is for. Alright, that's been Wind with Mr. Mayo, examining personification. Thank you very much. And as John Green always seems to be telling us at the end of episodes, and Mr. Mayo doesn't know why he's telling you all the time now too, other than because it makes him look and sound like John Green, who Mr. Mayo happens to idolize. Don't forget to be awesome. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.